What's up? So, my name is DJ Bruja, aka Deputy Director of the Deputies. Can you hear me?
Wait.
What?
It's not loud enough.
It's not loud enough? I just gotta speak up. Or you gotta listen up.
Listen up.
I feel loud to me, but anyway, so tonight we got a little special edition of the book club. Who here has been a part of the book club? Okay, a lot of woos. I like the woos. All right, so for the book club, we try to read something together and like think through and talk about some of the important issues that are in the book. Go figure, a book came along that actually was like right on point, not only with our issues, but our organization. And so tonight we're actually really blessed to have the author of that book, Lydia Pelot-Hobbs, who's here today.
Lydia!
And what you're going to hear in our conversation with Bean Eugene Dean, we got Harry Johnson, aka Dirty Harry, and we got Dr. Noel Henderson over here. Three members, OGs of the Special Civics Project. And we're going to kind of get into a little of the Special Civics Project, which was part of Lydia's research, which went into the book. So without further ado, I'd love to invite our special guests up to the stage. And we've got some nice, cool little mics. I'd love it if you could kind of, clip it on your thing.
Yeah, great.
You should pick it up pretty good. We don't have to worry about Norris taking this move.
How do we set this? Oh, there we go.
All right. My jokes fall on deaf ears, even at my own house. But anyway, we got Eugene Dean. Where's he at? There he is. All right. So give you, they should all be on. If you can just kind of.
I was,
Hello.
In a good spot.
You knew I was.
Charles is going to give you a little sound check if you guys can kind of talk into a little bit. How you guys doing?
All right.
Good.
Is it working?
So we're also going to.
You hear me, Charles?
We're going to pass the mic. We got Ezekiel, and we got you guys, and I'm going to get off this mic, but y'all are going to be able to share this mic. And now I'd love to turn it over to our lovely host, Ezekiel.
Yeah. So thank you for having me. Thank you for just coming. As we celebrate 20 years of voting, and we're also honoring Black August, we are excited to have this discussion with our author of our book, Prison Capital, alongside with our founding members of the Angola Special Civics Project. We have some folks, the folks that's up here on this stage have been organizing and doing work throughout our state. And for those of you that are new to the book, or still reading through it, don't worry. We want today's discussion to be for everyone. We also have handouts with an overview of the book, its chapter, and quotes. The intent is for us to just join in this discussion. We will have lots of time for the audience for Q&A, so please write down your questions. Here we have the Angola Special Civics Project laid the foundation for vote and has inspired our movement. By combining collective action research, political education, electoral organized, and coalition building, Angola Special Civics Project fought for freedom from the inside out, a mission that continues today. We are honored here today to have our very own Mr. Norris Henderson. Thank you, Norris, for being here. Eugene Dean on the Eugene. Thank you for being here, Eugene. And we have Harry Johnson. Some of us know Dirty Harry on the favorite one. And thank you to our author, Dr. Lydia Hobbs. That's the author of Prison Capital and the Jail is Everywhere. Fighting, she continued to fight. She continued this fight against mass incarceration, and we're just happy to have her join us today. She comes all the way from Kentucky. She is the professor of Geographic and African American Studies at the University of Kentucky. We are thankful to have you here today in what we call the Biggie Learning Room. So when you come here, expect to walk away with something, albeit just a tad bit smaller. We're going to begin, Lydia. So are you ready?
I hope so.
How do you feel about being here amongst these great minds?
I feel wildly honored. I'm so happy to be here. It's such a pleasure.
I'm happy to have you. I believe everyone is happy to have you. They were excited throughout the entire duration of the book club, like from beginning to end. We had a lot of books, all the boxes of books. Every one of them has left the building, including all of mine. So that means that book is a hot item, and if you have not purchased one, please get some. I believe Lydia has a discount or something.
I have a discount code. Yep.
So we'll get more into that maybe at the end, but we want to dive straight into it. Your connection. We're going to talk about your connection with both, and the Angola Special Civics Project has deep roots. Can you share how you first became aware of like the Angola Special Civics Project and what led you to even get involved?
Thank you so much. And I want to say again, thank you so much everyone for being here. It is such a pleasure. And the easiest answer, sorry, can we hear me over the thunder? Okay, it's been dry and now of course there's thunderstorms. Is what feels like a million years ago and also a blink ago. So in the years after Katrina, I was fortunate enough to volunteer with Safe Streets Strong Communities, which is where I met Norris, who was the director of Safe Streets Strong Communities, which if folks are not familiar with it, was an organization which I talk about some in the book, but was really organizing for the reconstruction of the New Orleans criminal legal system after Hurricane Katrina. So I met Norris then by sitting around and doing media research and whatever other tasks that it's made sense to do. And somewhere during that time period, I decided to go to the University of New Orleans and get a master's. And I was trying to figure out what to write a master's thesis topic about. And Norris had very casually told me about the Angola Special Civics Project here and there. Just, you know, dropping it in here, there. And so at some point I said, Norris, has anyone written about the Civics Project? And he said, no. And I said, would it be useful for me to do that? And he said, yeah, that'd be a good idea. And so with Norris's kindness and generosity, I sat down with Norris for many, many, many interviews. And this is back in 2009 to 2010, so a long time ago. He introduced me to Eugene Dean over here, Biggie, Chico, other folks. And I really had the honor of getting to do that research. And from doing that project, I found out I had a lot more questions. So I wanted to write more things. I wanted to look deeper into it. So I did the very often stupid thing where I decided to go get a PhD and decided to dig into these questions and trying to track the story of the organizing against mass incarceration in Louisiana. Because often the story was Louisiana is the most incarcerated place on earth, but there was a massive erasure of all of the kinds of racial, economic, social justice organizing to make a different kind of Louisiana. So I wanted to kind of lift up those stories, learn what I didn't know, basically find the book that I had been looking for that I couldn't find. And so, you know, there's a lot more details to it, but it really comes out of those early days in post-Katrina New Orleans, trying to think about what a different city could be, and just Norris being so kind and generous and sharing stories with me about the Civics Project.
Thank you. Thank you. Especially in one of your readings, I heard that there were a lot of books, like there were a lot of newsletters about the rodeo, so there wasn't enough that was shared with us about all of the work that was done from the inside. So thank you for sharing that. And in your sharing, you said there was a love letter, that this book was a love letter to Louisiana. You describe prison capital as like, when you describe it, you are very passionate about it, and you emphasize like Louisiana is worth fighting for. Could you elaborate on what inspired you to write the book and how you envision it being used in the fight for justice?
Yeah, so I should say this, so I'm not from New Orleans. My godmother's from here. That's how I first got connections with the city. Pre-Katrina, I came here post-Katrina, as I just said, with a lot of other young folks in those first years after the storm. And my godmother always says that New Orleans either sucks people in or it spits people out. It does one or the other. So either people move here and they think they're gonna stay forever and they leave within like 2 months, or they think they're gonna come for a year and then they can't leave forever. And I'm in that latter category. In fact, while I teach at the University of Kentucky, I still have a house that I rent with my partner, who's a professional musician, about a mile away in Mid-City. So I'm back and forth constantly. So often, and I went and got my PhD in New York City, which has a lot of pros and cons to it. And I found that when I was up there and I would talk about Louisiana, there was often, how do I put this? There was an arrogance that would come about Louisiana, about the South. There would be people who would say, well, of course, isn't that place just backwards? And there would be a complete and total erasure of the ways in which people fight for justice here, right? Or they would say things to me about like, well, those people voted for those people to run the state, which at that time was Jindal, but is now Landry, right? And I'd say, yeah, and also do you know all the people that are held captive and cannot vote for these people and are having these folks forced down their throats? And so I realized that part of this project is not just to kind of document the horrors, because it's really easy. So like there's all this writing about the rodeo in Angola, there's all this writing about all of the terrible things that happens, the racism, the exploitation, all of the kind of ways, the displacement that people experience here, without a sense of like, it's people who want a different version. And I fundamentally believe most people in Louisiana want a different kind of Louisiana. And so for me, this is a project that was trying to help to both show how small groups of elite people have pushed forth deeply unpopular policies over and over and over again, and how folks have repeatedly organized and fought back for a different kind of state, most significantly, but not only, for formerly, currently incarcerated folks, criminalized folks, and their loved ones. And that actually really centering that helps us think about what are the other kinds of places Louisiana can and should, and I believe will become.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we're going to move into our members. First, we will hear from our very own Norris Henderson. As we gather today in this Biggie Learning Center, could you share the significance of your work and Kenneth Biggie Johnson and the role of the law library on the inside in all of those efforts?
Well, I think that, it'd be probably next week this time to talk about Biggie and Biggie's contribution to not just me, but to all of us. Biggie was kind of like a legal genius. I mean, this guy just had it, simple as that. And it was really his concept that actually started the project the way the project actually morphed to be. Initially, when this project got started was because Ted Quant from the Toomer Center and Linda LaBranche, who was a friend of Wilbur Rito's, was trying to put something together to kind of like, let's see, can we push Wilbur out the door? It was Edwin Edwards, it was his last term in office, and we were seeing whether or not he was willing to go back on a promise he had made to the victim families that as long as he was in office, Wilbur would never get out of prison. And so they started this concept about, hey, let's try to see, can we build a voting block? And voting block of our families and friends on our side. And, like I tell people all the time, is that in prison, the question always comes up, who put you in charge? And at this time, because, Biggie had this reputation of being a legal genius, but at the same time, Biggie was kind of like in traffic. And so a lot of the folks in the prison was like, yeah, he's smart enough to pull it off, but he may be on skates tomorrow. I mean, he may get scooped up and get locked up. And so we was kind of like just thinking about how do we do this at the same time get everybody on board, because even a lot of people felt during that time that they couldn't get out of prison because of Wilbur. That nobody would do nothing for us because Wilbur would slip through one of the cracks. And so this work kind of like started in the shadows of this guy actually working with us to kind of like undermine this system, knowing that like 90% of the people in this prison was kind of like blaming him for something he had no control over. And so when we actually started, what we started doing, started recruiting people. We started recruiting people after, me and Biggie, both of us worked in the library. After night in, just talking about this idea of how we're going to bring it together. How do we bring everybody on board? And let me back up, because initially it was just called the Civics Project. And what happened was folks didn't feel, being a part of something and belonging is two different things. And so a lot of folks didn't feel that they belonged, that they wasn't a part of it. And so what happened was, when we did this first foray in trying to get this thing together, it was a lot of the white guys who were kind of like on the fringes, who was like, some of them was down, some of them wasn't, some of the Latino population, same thing. And so what happened was, when we first did this major push, everybody still thought it was this movement just to get Wilbert out. They didn't see, well, what a residual benefit gonna come to me. And so what we started doing was saying, well, look, we got to do this. We got to bring people on board who have the very same issues. So we started recruiting people who were in prison for armed robbery. That's when the Randy Tuckers, the Lawrence Matthews, all these folks who had armed robberies, like, y'all gonna be the brain trust on armed robbery. Then we start bringing the guys who had sex offense charges, all the guys who had murder charges. This is y'all issue. Y'all gonna represent this portion of the population in this document we're gonna put together. And so we started out reaching out across the country to all the secretaries of state across the country to find out, if I went to prison and went to jail in Texas for this very same charge, how much time would I spend? And then we started realizing that, wait a minute, we really the outliers. If I went to prison in Texas with a life sentence, I could get out in like 7 or 8 years. I went to prison in Mississippi, the same thing, because they had, their good time system was like on the front end, not on the back end like Louisiana was. And so we literally started kind of like collectivizing all these stories, and we put together a white paper, and we called it The Tale of 10 States, because we researched 10 states. We left out New York and California, because everybody would look to them to be in the most liberal places in this country and say, well, them folks will do anything. And so we took, the only northern state that we focused on was Pennsylvania, because Pennsylvania had a life of colony just like we did. They had the same amount of lifers without parole that we had. And so this work started day in and day out. Every day we were spending at least 20 hours a day in the library, because working in the library, we could stay in there all night if we chose to. But we was literally spending 20 hours a day just researching all these laws and then having these meetings, because again, we was doing this technically unauthorized, because he's like organizing in prison is something that they don't want you to do, because they figure you're trying to overthrow them. And so we was meeting on the iron pile, on the side of the building, in the gym, wherever we could meet. And then finally we got some of the guys who had established clubs, the vets. We got the vets to give us one of their meeting nights, and we got the Lifers Association to give us one of their meeting nights, so we can kind of like introduce this concept to the general population. And so as we started to move forward, there still was a lot of doubt from people about how this is going to benefit them. And this was like the mid-'80s, and so by the time we get to 87, we've already drafted a bill, was fortunate to find a legislator who was willing to introduce the legislation, got the legislation introduced, and the legislation died. And when the legislation died, a lot of folks started peeling away. It's like just some other harebrained idea y'all didn't come up with, got our hopes up and everything and went away. But the core group of us just stood together. And what we found out from the guys in the outer camps who couldn't travel back and forth to man prison while we was doing all the strategizing was that they felt left out, that they didn't feel a part. And so one of the first things we did was we rebranded ourselves. That's when we called ourselves the Angola Special Civic Project, to be more inclusive. And as we kept pushing the envelope towards administration, they realized over time that we wasn't organizing technically against them. We was organized just to get out of prison. Because what had kind of like prompted this whole conversation was that we was under consent decree. There were constant staff on inmate violence, inmate on staff violence, inmate on inmate violence, a bunch of suicides, you name it, it was happening. And folks were becoming hopeless. And so there was a lady who predicted that we was going to have the worst prison riot in the history of this country. And we started thinking about what had happened in Attica, what had happened in San Quentin, what had happened in New Mexico, what had happened in New Jersey. And it was like, there was a group of people who were still saying, let's burn this place down. And it was like, yeah, we set it on fire. They move us 5 miles in any direction, we still inside this prison. Because the prison, is, if folks don't know, this prison is 18,000 acres large. As far as the eye can see, you're still inside the prison. And so the thing was, no, we got to kind of like figure this thing out a different way. And so we just kept pushing and pushing. And we got a breakthrough in 1990 when we actually got the legislation passed that created 2045. 20 years in prison, 45 years of age, you become eligible for parole. But what happened then was that the core group of folks who actually pushed this legislation were all lifers. And when the legislation passed, it foreclosed lifers from even being benefits. So, you know, the lesson learned from that was being on the cutting edge of change, sometimes you don't benefit from the change you bring about. And what did happen again was there was a massive peel away because everybody in the prison who wasn't a lifer overnight became eligible for release. And so they was like, ain't no need for me to keep fighting now because I got a mechanism to get out. And so this core group of us just kind of like stayed together, kept the little engine that could. We just kept on pushing. And, you know, gradually start tackling one thing at a time. Were there a lot of repercussions and consequences? Yeah, I got locked up. Biggie got locked up. Biggie actually got transferred out to our institution because of the work. And some folks just got disheartened that, and not necessarily, I'm using the nice word, disheartened. Mm-hmm. Some people just got afraid because they didn't want to get sent to Camp J or sent to an Olive camp if they was in a main prison and vice versa. So the work kind of like became challenging, but we didn't have the luxury to quit. That was the thing that kept us going. We didn't have the luxury to give up. If we gave up, we just kind of like anchored right there and that was it. So we just kept on pushing. So the project really became the lifeline for folks in the prison who didn't have a mechanism to get out. And when the first 1 or 2 guys left, it was almost like pandemonium that, hey man, we actually got a bill passed. And I think about that a lot now because I remember we used to invite people in all the time and some lady from the League of Women Voters came in and was kind of like educating us about the process. And one advantage we really had was Chico. The reason Chico was a real asset to us because Chico, before he came to prison, worked at the clerk of court's office. Chico knew everything about politics. He knew everything about precincts and voting and precinct captains. And he was able to educate us on how we can make a difference. And so we had an opportunity to really, the whole concept of the project was Edwin Edwards was going to run for governor and Charles Buddy Romer. And the whole thing was Romer, we knew if Romer got in office, nobody was going to be able to get a pardon. Edwards at that time had been in office 3 times, and every time he left, he took thousands of people along with him. He signed pardons. And so when we got to this point, it was like, let's organize our families and stuff to kind of like get this guy back in office. And what happened, he quit on us. He quit on us. He made the runoff, and then he just resigned. He just stepped away and gave Buddy Romer his seat. And that dampened us again because it was like, man, this is a long road to hoe here. Because nobody see a way out now, because everybody got life and Folks are aging, folks are dying. They opened up a new graveyard in the prison. So all of these things were kind of like heavy on everybody. And so we just found a way to kind of like be that glue, to kind of like still holding people together. And I'm grateful, I'm really grateful that people had a lot of faith and confidence in me. And I tell people all the time, when Melvin Smith's around Big Eyes, it was Big Eyes that actually convinced me to step into the road that I stepped into. Because Melvin was like, hey, bro, everybody kind of like know Biggie got these little hiccups, and folks ain't gonna follow him, but if you get in front, bro, everybody gonna get behind you. And I was kind of like just impressed by the fact that 5,000 folks in this prison were in the road. No, because again, in prison it's like, who put you in charge? And the thing about it, I was young. You know, I was one of the younger guys, and so it's almost like this young guy, you know, inside his environment where folks had already been in prison 15, 20, 25 years, and here comes this young guy that's coming along to tell them, I got the key to get y'all out the door. And convincing people that we had a solution. And we just stuck to it, you know, literally we just stuck to it. And over time, as people started gradually starting to relieve, we started kind of like shifting our focus in the sense of what else we can tackle. So we started looking at the low-hanging fruit, started looking at drug lifers, you know. Drug lifers shouldn't be in prison for the rest of their life. So by 1999, 2000, we was able to get a breakthrough with the drug lifers being eligible for parole. And then once the drug lifers, then we started convincing people, well, we all got a life sentence, what's the difference? You know, and then people start paying attention. But no, the project really was the catalyst and the foundation for where we're at today. And I tell folks all the time, I made a commitment that when I left, one, I wouldn't forget where I came from, nor the people I left behind. But I also made another commitment to myself that 1 year from the date after I'm home, I would incorporate vote. We was going to incorporate the Civics project, but we had kind of like done a popcorn exercise, and we was like, what we going to call ourselves? And so that's how we got the acronym VOTE, Voice of Ex-Offender, from in the education building, just popcorning on the board, trying to come up with something, who we are, we want to have a voice, who we are, we this group of people who have a right to vote that a lot of people didn't know. So we became kind of like the Paul Revere of just alerting former incarcerated people that, hey man, you get out, you got a right to vote. Hey, you get out, you got a right to vote. And believe it or not, a lot of folks got out before I did and didn't do anything. You know, didn't do anything, didn't take the challenge on. And so it's kind of like, once we kind of like got started, you know, the rest is kind of like history, you know?
Thank you. Y'all heard it yourself. But that great work and that wisdom has been passed on to all of us, all of our brothers and sisters, and we want to thank you for that organizing, because that organizing has led us to where we are today. Now I'd like to hear from the two brothers on the end. I want them to speak more on their personal involvement. First of all, tell us who you are again, for those that may not know you, but I think we all know you and recognize y'all from the great work. But still share who you are and those specific roles that you played within the ASCP. Tell about your involvement and how you helped shape this together, like where we are now.
Okay, well, my name is Harry Johnson. I first met Norris 1970, when he was a youngster. He was a youngster. I met Biggie when I was on death row in 1972. Biggie used to come see me on death row. I met Roberino. We were on death row together. You know. At this time, Edward Edwards, the progenitor of the mass incarceration syndrome in Louisiana, was running for office of governor. And if you go to Angola, or you look at any of these prisons around here to date, you're going to see it was built under Edwards administration. Buildings. He only did that for money. He did that for money. When he built those penitentiaries, you understand, he had beds. Supposed to have open beds, but they didn't have open beds. They had sealed beds. And he made money off them. Okay. Now he's building these penitentiaries. So now he has to start filling them up. So here we come up with the drug laws. When I was on death row, 1972, June 29th, the Supreme Court outlawed the death penalty. That time, Louisiana had a law on the book, 10-6. It was a 10-6 lifer. You were able to get out. You understand? It was automatic. It was just about automatic. The classification department would write the governor's office and tell you the governor, the lieutenant governor, you understand, they would sign you release papers and you would go home. Okay. So once Edwards got in the office, him and Elaine Hunt, her sainted soul, and they came up with, okay, well, we're going to say, since this is not actually on the book and it's more of a practice, we're going to eliminate 10-6. But I had I had what you call a rap sheet. And I had parole. You understand? I had parole. I was supposed to go home, but I was going to make parole in 1978. But they knocked that out. You understand? But all the while, Edwards was behind the scenes scheming. You know, he's making money. He's making money. You go to Angola right now. Oh, any state prison. You understand? So he also appealed to his constituents because we know Louisiana may be one of the few states I've ever heard they're advocating. The citizens was asking, build a penitentiary, or build a prison in my neighborhood. Okay, that's the way he's so he's gonna put people to work. He's gonna put the Venoris, he's gonna put the butlers, amongst others, to work in the penitentiary. But anyway, so all hope was taken away from us. So I was in the traffic with Biggie. Norris never was in the traffic with Biggie. But me and Norris was friends.
Wait, let me stop you, because y'all know what inner traffic means, right? I mean, you cutting up.
But so like I said, I was in the traffic. You understand? But I had friends. And Norris was one of my friends. A lot of people didn't know Norris and I were friends. And a lot of times Norris would come up with an idea, and me and him would meet on the yard. He said, "Oh, Harry, what do you think about this?" He said, "Oh, there is something like that." I said, "Okay, yeah, think about this. Yeah, you understand?" But I couldn't be an active participant, active face of it, because of the reputation that I had in the penitentiary for being in the traffic. So, but Norris always kept me, abreast. Me and Biggie was real close. He kept me abreast. You know what I'm saying? I met Chico Yancey. I met Gerald Bosley, Ron Whitbury. And I can remember Norris and I'm sitting around on the side of the building. He called me over. Norris always, he kind of pulled me in because I go, "Oh, look at Harry Johnson," Norris pulled me in and said, "Oh, yeah, he got an idea," or something like that. Yeah. So we're talking, we're discussing, we'll come up with it. And Norris said, "Man, what you think about this program?" Randy Tucker, you understand? So Norris really avatar, he really began it. Chico Yancey, Ron Whitbury, Gerald Bosley. And it grew. But we didn't have any hope. We didn't have any hope in Angola until this program really began. We didn't have any hope. They had more guys was dying every year than was going home. That's true. Like I said, they didn't open one. When I came, they Point Lookout number 1. Then they had Point Lookout number 2. And they had Point Lookout number 3. I said, "Hey, it's all here, And Norris came up with the idea. Chico came up with the idea. Billy came up with the idea. You see, man, let's try to do this. To be honest, I didn't think was going to work out because of Angola and because of the money that the prisoners and security experiment was making for the state of Louisiana. But they kept at it. They kept at it. They kept at it. So next thing I know, I said, okay, they got parole. The guy went on riding. Oh, that was a boo-boo there. You know, that was a boo-boo. That was a boo-boo. Every number one guy went on riding for murders, you know, to get out. Life sentences. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I used to take the talk. Like I said, me and Biggie used in the track together. We always talk. You know? So he came, you know, all these things. The first things came over, look at 2045. I said, oh man, that's not going to be successful. Doggone. It was successful. So now I'm saying, so this is the first time I said, well, man, you know, it may be possible someday that I could get out. It may not wasn't realistic, but it was reasonable for me to believe, you know, that maybe one day I would get out. One time I didn't have any hope. I didn't believe I was one of the guys. Oh man, that's why I was in the trap. What the hell? I didn't know what's going on. You know what I'm saying? And no matter what I did, you know, no matter what I would do positive, that's really, just another no. Just another no. You understand? And my number was 76654. I got that number in 1973 when I came off of death row. And I kept that number until December 1st, 1975. Joe Norris is my advocate. Will be above and beyond the whole system, you understand, to get out. And I made my promise. I made my promise. And I remember we were sitting behind the building and they started. And you know, and I was thinking, wow, I started out with just 2-3 people with ideas, you know, kicking around, you know. I don't know how much hope they had that they were going to be successful in doing this, but I didn't have very much, to be honest, you know. But they kept at it. But the glue that made everything and kept everything together was Mr. Henderson. He was Norris. You know, when I met him, he was youngster, but you could tell he was intelligent. And life dealt him with few blows, bad blows, but he overcame. He gave hope to me and a lot of other guys. So now, you know what I'm saying, what was non-realistic became reasonable to me. Then it occurred, it happened. And it all began with the Angola Special Civics project sitting on the side of Ash Street, you understand? I give formerly Norris Biggie Z, we all have great respect now for Biggie. You know, great respect now for Biggie. You know, even though he was in traffic sometimes. He was in traffic sometimes. He kept at it, Chico Yancey, you know, so Ron Whitworth, Gerald Bosby, I can remember all the fellas that were singing around. Even Bobby Seed contributed. So he was in the traffic too. He contributed. You know? And so, just to say, my message is that you can start off with something that seems impossible. But we can make it possible happen. Now here we come. We have another administration. And everything that this group has done, they have sought to undo. A lot of things they have undone. So it's up to our advocacy to continue to struggle and put these things back in place. Because there's a lot of good people that's left behind. There's a lot of uneducated people on the street that don't see the dangers of this time. But when we had these draconian laws placed on the books, when we had reforms pulled back, retracted, you understand? it's aimed at a certain class of people. I'm not going to say it's aimed against whites. I'm not going to say it's aimed at blacks. It's aimed at poor people. Our poor people, we're going to be the ones that's going to suffer the brunt of this. Our brothers, our sisters, our neighbors, our friends, and so I came out and said, well, I'm going to do this. Every time I came to North, I asked for some sisters. And all we was there. So all we was there. It's the same thing with Biggie before he paid. God bless him. But let me see. I can't fully express how much I owe to Norris, how much I owe to this organization, how much I owe to you people in here. Because I know y'all were my advocates too. If y'all wasn't advocating for me, you would have been advocating against me. But you advocated for me, you spoke up. You know what I'm saying? So he can see us. We're here now. We're here now. So we're going to advocate for our people. You know what I'm saying? All of our people. You know what I'm saying? Our class of people. From this moment on further, we will continue to. And God bless. And Angola special civics practice. The genitor of it all.
Good job.
It's an honor, especially after serving, I want to say, correct me if I'm wrong, 56 years.
No, 55 years and 2 months.
55 years and 2 months. After serving 55, that's all me to even say. It's very hard for me.
For real.
Thank you for still saying. Thank you for showing up. Thank you. Bean, now we're going to hear from Eugene Dean. I want to say I think he could have been in traffic, but he's doing great work. He will hear from himself. Dean, share.
Well, my name is Eugene Dean. For your information, I happen to be in a little bitty traffic, you dig? Just a little. But I always had good attorneys. Like Norris was my attorney up there. Chico was my attorney up there. So I was in good hands from the beginning. But, all in all, I went to Angola, 17 years old, with 65 years. And when I got those 65 years, it was like, I told the judge, I cursed him out and I told him, I'm going to get his time back. So when I got to Angola, the first thing I did was get in a law library. When Norris came up there, he wound up becoming a law librarian. I was so adamant about trying to find a way out. I used to even sneak up there when I wasn't supposed to go up there. Like when they called child time, everybody go and eat, I sneak to the law library. And I ran into Biggie while I was up there. Like, it's been said before, one of the greatest legal minds that I know of and that a lot of people that I've ran into express in this whole state. Speaking with Biggie, I know a lot of attorneys that was in this state used to send their paperwork up there for Biggie to do work for them, because a lot of attorneys didn't like to do post-convictions. So, that was, they still don't. So, me and Biggie wind up conversing about some legal issues. Everything that came through the legal department, Norris used to read it, and he used to say, I'm not going to do no work for you. You're going to work for yourself. He didn't mind doing the legal research, because this guy of mine used to be, everybody in the prison that a case come through that benefited them, he'll put a little sticky pad with their name on it, and when you come to the law library, especially the ones, the few of us that really came to the law library regularly, he'll put that case on the side that may affect your case. And me and him was talking the other day, it was like, we probably set a record coming back to this courthouse in Orleans Parish, trying to get out. He mentioned that it was like 52 times. So I don't know, I might have been 100, because I was going before he went on court orders. Yes, yes, that was a good thing. And my role, you know, in the Angola Special Civics Project, I worked on the current events committee. So my job was to look at the newspaper, check the news out, anything that was dealing with new laws or anything was dealing with politicians, that was my job. I was on that committee. And I used to, when we meet, all of us had our little different committees, and that's the stuff that we use to get our information from. Like Norris said about the 10 states that we used to compare our state with and the benefits that they was getting. I did the same thing on my personal case with the help of Biggie and Norris. You know, at that time that we did some research and we looked at all the armed robbery cases that happened in the state and around the age that I was at the time that it happened. And we looked at it and, you know, it's not a race thing, but it is a race thing, because all the guys that was other races got 5 to 10 years. All the people of color at my age got 33 on up. So that was one of the vehicles that we used to get back in court. Thank God for Calvin Johnson. I owe it all to him and Norris, because not only Calvin was my judge, he was also Norris' judge as well. And Calvin granted my application twice. The first time in '97, he was like, yeah, you done enough time. He had so many people in his ear talking about he deserved another chance. You know, he was 17 years old when it happened. 16 when it happened, 17 when he got convicted. And Calvin said, oh, if something I can do, I'm going to do it. And he did. And then the state appealed it. So when Calvin vacated my sentence, 30 days later, he had to re-sentence me back to 50 years. Initially, I had 65, and on direct appeal, the Supreme Court, Louisiana Supreme Court, said it was too excessive for a 16-year-old to get that much time. So they sent it back to the judge, and at that particular time, it was Rudolph F. Becker III. And he told me that I couldn't be rehabilitated. My first time. So at the same time, I'm working with the Angola Special Civic Project on my own case at the same time. And I really seen the vision that Norris and Big and them seen about this voting block. So we was like, yeah, this can work here. You talking about, you know, we had 5,000 prisoners in Angola, just in Angola. I think at the time when I first went there, the total population over the state was like 26,000. So just imagine if you get 2 of your family members to vote the way that you asked them to vote, it can determine any state race. You know, so that was our vision in talking about that voting block. But, you know, when Biggie came home, I continued to kind of like communicate with him. And at the same token, I was still working on my case. And like Harris said, man, thank God for Angola Special Civic Project. You know, a lot of guys benefited from the work that we done. And that's one of my issues that I have right now. With all of these guys that benefited for the work that we done, this building should be full. Because if it wouldn't be for 2045, a bunch of them wouldn't be free. They'll still be in prison.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you again for sharing that. You have been done, the organizing that have been done on the inside. We just want to, I want to go back to Lydia and just get a deep dive into some of the things that occurred in the book. And when you read the book focuses a lot in chapter 5 on reconstructing the New Orleans criminal legal system in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. You start off with some quotes from Norris Henderson, and I just want you to speak on that for those that read the book and for those that may not have read the book, but definitely could make a personal connection with some of what you may have to share.
I don't have Norris's quote memorized, but would you like to read it?
It says here. Norris, would you like to share some of those quotes? Because let me tell you, Norris have a lot of quotes, and we try to write them down and make that connection, but I can't read it because I have it here, but maybe Norris himself, because we have him here, can share some of the quotes that he shared with us quite often. All right.
All right, Nancy. I don't know particularly which one.
It's in your handout.
Yeah, I don't know exactly which particular one, because I'm always quoting something or somebody. But what Lydia's talking about, this was in the aftermath of Katrina. I was working at the Juvenile Justice Project of Louisiana. And when the storm hit, like everybody else, everybody evacuated, but we came back. And one of the things was we realized that we have an opportunity here that this system is down. Let's see, can we disrupt their flow? And so that's what we started to do. We looked at the public defense system, the way it worked that day. It was more judge-centered than client-centered. All the public defenders catered to the judges. But what had happened with Katrina, everybody was gone. Nobody had a lawyer. Mm-hmm. And so we actually got the Southern Center for Human Rights to come in, and they went all over the state, interviewed everybody that was in prison. And we got Judge Hunter to rule that the public defense system was unconstitutional, and those folks got out of prison. And so, it's kind of like, again, how opportunity, we always tell ourselves, opportunity being able to recognize it when you see it. And sometimes when things fall apart is when the greatest opportunity present themselves, because you can be the people who put it back together. And that's what we started doing. So a lot of the things we see now, the public defender system, the way it operates now, follow their client from the day they get in court to the disposition of the case, that never existed. Public defenders at that time had two jobs. They could have their own private practice and be a public defender. And the most striking thing you was find out was that if you ask the public defender, hey man, why don't you ask the judge give me a bail reduction? They put on their other hat. Well, if you hire me, I'll go and talk to the judge about a bail reduction. No, real talk. And so we were able to kind of like interrupt a lot of stuff. And I know that may not be necessarily a quote, but there's several on here, and I'll read one. All the things they measured were ripe at Angola. I mean, hopelessness was there. Nobody was going home. People with long sentences, you name it, it was evident in Angola. So at this time, me and some other guys started thinking about what we can do to change, not necessarily our conditions, but our circumstances. And I think that's the thing that really propelled us to be where we're at. And Harry said something a minute ago, and I'm just kind of like sitting here thinking about it. This has been a long journey. I'm serious, real talk. And sometimes you don't think about it when you're in it, doing it. But Harry said the first time we met was in 1970. Man, that was 54 years ago. That wasn't yesterday. That was 54 years ago. And then when Harry said he did 55 and 2, it's like, damn, man, almost just 1 year after he got locked up, man. If you look at it, is that we've been on this journey trying to get all of us to exodus that place, you know? And so when you think about the work, man, that people don't see the toil and struggle that went into it. They see the the flash, you know, they see the flash, but they don't see the work that went into it. But it was a journey. Here's another quote on here. In the post-Katrina world in this city, everything that could go wrong was going wrong. And it wasn't hard to find people who had been impacted one way or the other, either by the police department or either by the jail. Our job at Safe Street Strong Community was to reach out to those families, collectivize their stories, and train them to take on these leadership roles to start to advocate for themselves. And that's what we've done. And I think we've done, because one of the things about organizing people is that, again, people have to feel that they belong. Because we had people inside of Safe Streets who had loved ones. We would have a meeting, and the people who had loved ones who were impacted by the police, they would show up. The people who had loved ones in jail wouldn't show up. And then the next meeting, the people who had loved ones in jail would show up. The people impacted by the police wouldn't show up. It was primarily because they didn't understand the nexus between the two. Your child wouldn't be in jail if it don't be for the police. And then it started to click. And when they started to click, the organizing took a life of its own. We started organizing people who were square as a pool table and green as a rag. We organized the Madison family around Danziger Bridge with their brother being killed. Then people didn't have a clue what organizing was about. They had a member of their family who was an NOPD. And so they didn't see, well, how could this be? And these are kind of like, I ain't gonna say middle class, upper middle class, or I can actually say these are well-to-do people. And, but these people allowed us to organize them. But it all started with educating them about what these problems were they were confronted with. And so I think Lydia's book is the catalyst to do these same things. They kind of like start peeling the onion back on about what's possible. Because like Harry said, there was just 2 guys sitting in a law library. Well, I take that back, 4 guys sitting between the law library and the Angola office, just talking about what we need to do to change these things and recruiting each other. Just recruiting each other. Wasn't nobody, just each other, kind of like convinced them that, hey man, look, I know, and Harry, the story that Harry don't tell as to why I always would go to Harry, because although I had relationships with a lot of these same guys that was in traffic, the best person to convey the story to them was somebody who was in traffic with them. And so I would always either go get Harry, I'll go get Slewfoot, because Slew ran the gambling the thing in the prison. So no, real talk. So I go to Slew. Hey, Slew, look, when they come to you to borrow some cigarettes to pay on the ticket, this is what I need you to talk to them about. And so this is how we start kind of like getting our message throughout the prison. We start having everybody from every walk of life in that prison be engaged. I mean, for guys who couldn't read and write, this was at a time where we had to, wasn't no such thing as these stick-on stamps and self-adhesive envelopes. We had folks who couldn't read and write, and they volunteered that, you know what, we're gonna lick all the stamps and seal all the envelopes. That was their job. And they took that to heart. And so this is how everybody give me, you know, a lot of credit for where we at, but it was a lot of people who gave blood, sweat, and tears to make this thing come to fruition. My blessing is that I just, for some reason, God chose me to be the vehicle that this thing passed through. I think he made a good decision. In real talk, I think he made a good decision because when I looked at it, is that I was the guy inside that could navigate all those different circles. These guys gambling, these guys shooting drugs, these guys running, you know, doing everything else, the faith-based community, the white, you know, the Dixie Mafia guys. I had relationships with all those folks, and folks believed in me that it was something about this guy that was believable. And in the beginning, you know, folks was like, yeah, we didn't heard this, we didn't saw this movie before. But then when they start seeing the sequel to the movie, it was like, oh, wait a minute, there might be some substance to this. And like Harry said, 50 years later, man, it's like, it's still happening. And so none of this stuff is by happenstance. This stuff is literally by design, and the thing about it is that everybody has a purpose, The thing is figuring out what our purpose is. And for some of us, we found out what it was. And I was more excited, and Lydia probably don't know this, but when she wanted to do it was her thesis in school. And it was like, well, yeah, I'll help. And it's primarily because I always tell people, nobody would know our story unless we're willing to share it. And I know by me sharing my story with her, and she write her paper, well, everybody in the school gonna read about the Civics Project. They're gonna know who Norris and Big and Chico and Calvin and Dean, they're gonna know who all of us are. And then when the book gets published, everybody in this country gonna know about the Angola Special Civics Project. So I don't ever tell a story about what we do here without telling a story about what we done there. Because it was there that we actually cut our tooth to learn all the things. Like Eugene said, the law library was like, I'm grateful that everybody I would pass on a walk would give me a note. Hey man, can you research this for me? Yeah, and I would go back research and I know something else. And so it became advantageous for me to be entrusted with that kind of trust. Because people trusted me with their life. I mean, somebody come bringing their legal papers like, hey man, I'm trusting you to get me out of this place. And I was blessed to kind of like do that. And I remember with Bean, I was kind of like reading a case out of Texas about standby attorney. You know, he had when he got sentenced, he just told the lawyer, hey, stand in there with him so you can get sentenced. Read the case and like, oh, wait a minute, that's unconstitutional. And like, here it is, bro, send this to Calvin and see. And it was kind of funny because Calvin tell me all the time he used to be mad with me because I didn't send that to him soon enough. You know, but so no, it's kind of like this has been really a blessing in the sense that people have taken our work from behind the walls to kind of like see what we have done and to see, how far we've come. We've come a long way. And when, people keep saying 20, and I think about what Harry just said about 1970, man, that's 54 years. I was just going on 17 years old, so I've been doing this work kind of like really, really long time. But, the same thing, I made a commitment with Harry when I left in 2003. Get out of traffic, bro, I'm gonna come get you, bro. Get out of traffic, I'm gonna come get you. He got out of traffic, and there he is sitting right there,
Yep.
Good
guy,
so it's kind of like, and the thing is that folks like that, we always say, help us help you. And that's what this thing is all about. When I look in the room, I'm kind of like just excited about the people in the room. I look at Mark, who was our champ, boxing. Had he been on the street, we were kind of like looking at the pay-per-view, but they took that away from him, And so when I see all these things that we have been able to achieve, man, over time, it's just a blessing, it's just a blessing. And for Lydia to actually write about us is kind of like huge, because when I was here, I'm like, look, I'm going to circle the wagon, I'm going to contact everybody. And everybody felt the same way. This is how we get our story out. That story of us became, the story of me became the story of us. And now it's the story of now, because here it is 14 years later, and we're talking about that story that turned into her book, turned into a thesis for her graduate school, and then turned into a book. And the fact that when people would say, reporters would call and say, hey, tell me something about y'all, I would refer them to Lydia. I would say, look, go on our website, there's a thesis on our website, tell you our whole history. And so the reciprocity and, the work that you've done, and because I don't think we would have took the time to do it, to be honest with you, to write our own story. And I think that's one of the real tragedies about this work that we do. We don't pause long enough to tell our story. So thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. Thank you for pausing. Thank you for taking the time to share our story. Can we all agree that that's building collective power on the inside? Thank you, Lydia. Lydia, I would like to ask you and get your views about the legislative session that just passed in a special crime session. We know it was a brutal setback for Louisiana, and we'll move us further over incarceration. What can you share, or what can we learn from strategies and wisdom of our past to fight for freedom today?
That's such an important question. Thank you for asking it. And I just want to say something real quick too before I answer that, which is one of the joys of this book too, y'all, has been I get letters now from folks from St. Quentin, from Attica, from folks locked up in Illinois who are reading the book and write me about how they were so inspired by the Civics Project, right? So that's the other thing. That is like, right? So there's also like the ways these stories can travel, right? So it's really meaningful. It's also why I said the book couldn't be in hardcover. Usually books come out in hardcover first, but lots and lots and lots of prisons, you do not allow a hardcover book, right? So it was getting paperback so I could get it as soon as possible. But to go back to that really important question, I mean, the first thing that immediately jumped in my head is that we've been here before, right? Louisiana is not new to governors, to legislators who are making their political career on stealing away other people's lives. And there's a way that that can be overwhelming, it can be demoralizing. But what I also hope that we can see, because folks have been here before, are all of the different places that folks have organized to fight back. So part of the way the book works, if you want to read it, or if you have read it, or if you have no desire to read it, that's cool too, is that I'm trying, it's chronological, so it goes from the 70s to the present, more or less. And I'm trying to write through the different ways in which the Louisiana's term of mass incarceration got built. So, legislation, laws, the literal building up of prisons, the turn to the parish jail system to incarcerate state prisoners, as well as pretrial folks, as well as INS and ICE detainees, the role of policing, the role of state troopers, and at every single one of those junctions that someone is seeking through racist lies and capitalist dispossessions to kind of figure out more ways to lock folks up, there are folks pushing back. And so I say that because, one, the legislature is a key terrain of struggle, but it is not the only one, right? So part of what the book is trying to show is you gotta think about the governor, you gotta think about the legislature, you gotta think about a city council, you gotta think about a parish president, sometimes a school board, all these different kind of spaces. And I say that not to overwhelm, but to clarify, right? So at some moments, the state legislature might be in a fight with the governor, right? Even when they might both be tough on crime. At some points, parish governments might be in a fight with the legislature. At some points, you can build out a new, like the public defense system that was revamped after Katrina, right? That can become a point of intervention. And so I say this because I think the legislative session is bad, right? And I think that's unquestionable. I think Landry is, he is who says he is, right? The legislature say who they are. And you can't ignore the legislature, so I'm not saying that, right? It is an important key site of power, but it's not the only site of power. So the question is how do we figure out who has the power to do what where, and what are the different ways in which different laws can be shifted, different plans for jail or prison expansions can be stopped, what are the different spaces of possibility. And so for me, it's about thinking about, okay, and if Landry has these plans and these laws going into action, right, where are then the next levels, right? We know that his probation and parole is just terrible, right? But then how do we think about that as an arena? How do we think about the arena of what judges are now required to sentence people for or not, right? What is possible then for thinking about what folks are doing at the local level, who's prosecuting what, when police officers have discretion around you can charge someone for this or that, how are we thinking about that, right? What is the possibility of decriminalization at the municipal or the parish level, all of these different questions. Again, not because it's a question of getting freaked out, but there's all of these different places, but every single spot that they can figure out a way to lock more folks up is also a spot to roll back those very kind of policies or practices and figure out other ways that something else could come into being. Not just to stop the line, right, but to make a different kind of line, which I think, Vote is one of the, clearest organizations from the 2017 reforms. And I think it's easy to say, we should not be surprised if there was a backlash against the 2017 reforms, right? Because every time people power is built, anti-racist people power is built, there's going to be a racist backlash, right? So also the question is, how do we become prepared, which y'all already are, and then think about not just the next year, but the next 5 or the next 10, because that's what they're doing, right? Like, they saw this, right? They're working, they saw this, they built up to pull this back, and then there's a build up again. Yeah, I don't know if any of that's helpful, but that's what immediately comes to mind.
That's helpful. Thank you, and thank you for sharing. And they are working, and that's why we continue to work. That's why we do the work we do. That's why it's important that we continue to organize and educate so we can win. We can't just lay back. We got to keep on fighting. So I want to thank y'all for being here and fighting. At this time, I think because of the sake of time, I would like to hear, and if you have a question, we're going to use this time. Maybe there's something, I heard the buzzer, so I'm right on time. Maybe there's something you would like to hear from the other members or even from Lydia. If you have a question at this time, I would like to come to you so your question could be asked. Or you can feel free to even walk up. We're going to take a few questions from our members, our leaders. Thank you, thank you. Please share.
How y'all doing? My name is Cleveland McGowan. I was young when that car was real young. I just come home in March. And they have a system like re-entry programs with living conditions where you can actually have somewhere to stay. So if you don't want to just go see people that live right, you'll have something like with 72. Today I was at work, and Catholic Charities is part of my support group too, as well as a few other organizations. And they informed me that the re-entry program underneath the parole and probation has decided to cut out the program that I'm in August. And that they are trying to really make it hard that if these programs don't get on board with what the state wants them to do, even if they're non-profit, that they push them out. So my thing is anything that we can do to roll it back, because come August, I got to figure out something at the end of August.
I think one of the things that this is, again, like Lydia said, these people got a plan. And we always told if we fail to plan, we plan to fail. And so the thing is that they're looking at these entities that they give money to, and if they don't do what they want them to do, they're going to pull their money back away from them. But I think we just got to trust they're going to find a way to kind of like make this thing work. Because when you mentioned the first 72, the first 72 popped up out of thin air. It was me, Calvin, Ben, Tyrone, Jack, and Blair that actually started the first 72 just out of our pocket. And so it's not like we need money from Tom, Dick, and Harry to keep it going, just the will to make it happen. And that's how that started. It started us out of our pocket doing this. Somebody come on, somebody give them some money, somebody give them some clothes, and it was like, we can take this a step further. We had the property, rehabbed the property ourselves, and next thing you know, we had people in it, and we just kind of like just kept moving from there. Me and Ben back and forth on the highway to parole board. We got a place to send them to us. And we just kind of like by hook or crook made it work. So don't see that as just kind of like this is the end of something, because it's almost like this is the beginning of something, because now it's like, we learn to wean ourselves away from things. And when we wean ourselves away from things, what we do, we create something else. And so just like the first 72 popped up out of nowhere, to do it. Trust me, it's going to fix itself. And I know it may be not comforting now because you in this kind of like pipeline right now that I got to figure out where I'm going. But at the end of the day, what it does on the backside, probation and parole can't make no demands on you for anything because you took the umbrella I had. I was under a tent. You took it from me. So don't go complain about why I ain't doing this, why I ain't doing that. You took it away from me. And so, you know, sometimes people try things just to see how far they can go with it. But trust me, Catholic Charities and all the people who do programmatic stuff, they'll find another way to supplement the program. You know, because, trust me, they'll find another way. Because the same thing when they took money away from the first 72, it's like, well, how you want people to transition out if you're taking the transition away from them? And so it's going to kind of like I say again, they're crying out that they got a $5 million deficit right now. And so this is where it's coming from. All these crazy laws that they passed where money was flowing easily and it's kind of like, skirt, put the brakes on. Now you realize that was revenue generating. And so don't panic. It's going to be all right. You know?
I want to say this because he got that thing called about the Central City. When I came home the first time in '96, we didn't have no program.
Right.
They gave you a bus ticket and $20 or whatever you had on the books. This time when I get out after doing, 27 years, 6 months, and 24 days, they got all kind of programs. They had nothing. Even your parole officer trying to help. So, I know that August 1st, when all his little rollbacks come in, it's got to be a way to do something. And I know if the legislators, they work for us. So if they work for us and they won't do what you want them to do, vote them out. Yeah. Just vote them out. And put somebody in place. What's the little guy you introduced to that time? When you're trying to get
Devin.
Yeah.
Put somebody that we can work with.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm familiar with all these guys, all those guys. But like you say, we got to be mindful. We live in the great state. Yeah. We can remember this thing with the Trenton way back in '95 when John Doe and J. Ben Johnson was the Democratic Senator and Billy Tozan and all of those people was in the legislature. They've been trending and trending. They've been in Appalachian with Maryland for years and they finally got it with Kennedy. You know what I'm saying? He comes to the airport all the time. That's why I work at. I tell him, I say, Mr. Kennedy, I just want to ask you one question. He's like, what is that? So I say, I know you're a Republican. I said, well, why are you a straight party line voter? I said, you would even vote for the bill to get the infrastructure fixed. And Louisiana got some of the worst bridges and roads in the world. I say, that's why I can respect Mr. Cassidy, because even though the Republicans, and including you, y'all came for his head, he still cast a desire to vote to pass the $1 trillion infrastructure plan. I said, but you voted against it. All these people running up to you, shaking your hand like Mr. Kennedy, that. I said, you really ought to be ashamed of yourself. Like I said, I did 25 years. I did 25 years in federal prison. I just got out in October. I said that to say this. We just got to be mindful, like they said, of the people we elect. Like the Congress and the Senate, you get 2 senators from each state. They got to be elected statewide. So that's a difficult challenge in itself, because we only have 5 U.S. senators in U.S. history, 3 governors, and no sitting governor that's of color right now, as we speak. But those people that's in power, you got to hold their feet to the fire. If they say they're going to do something, they're going to do something. And like us in here, everybody that come here from now on, everybody just bring somebody with you. Because the people, like Laura said, the people is uneducated about what goes on. They ain't doing it in the warehouse, people in prison. And like they say, people in traffic, because when people feel discouraged, they'll do anything. We want to encourage the brother. Like Lawrence said, he made a commitment to the brothers when he left, and he kept his commitment. And that's saying a lot about who he is. When they gave him the keys to the city, he was doing the thing that he did. Because it's easy to get out and get rid. It's easy to get out and forget about the people that you left behind. A lot of people do it. A lot of people got good intentions, but they'll get out and get caught in traffic out here and forget about the brothers that left behind. And we got a lot of brothers that still left behind, and we can't give up on. We got to keep on pushing. We got to keep on fighting. Like we said, we got to And I appreciate everything you did and the things that y'all doing. And going forward, I'm gonna be here to do whatever I can to support y'all.
All right.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you, Lydia, for writing the book. I was a member of the book club. We met online for a couple of weeks. The book was great. It read, although it had a lot of stats and data, it read like a novel, you know, with all the information that was there. My question for you is, what does abolition democracy in Louisiana mean?
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for taking the time to read the book. You know, you write a book. It took me about a decade between research and writing, and you don't know if anyone will ever look at it. So I want to say again, it's such meaningful for folks to engage with it. So the term abolition democracy, I'm borrowing from the late great W.E.B. Du Bois. So W.E.B. Du Bois, in his incredible book, Black Reconstruction in America, which was published in 1935, so 91 years ago, is still the definitive book of Reconstruction as a struggle for Black liberation. And in the book, Du Bois, and many other folks have borrowed this from Du Bois, but Du Bois writes that the Reconstruction state was not just a state that was about the end or the abolition of slavery, but was abolition insofar as abolition meant the creation of a new kind of South, right? So it was not just a South without slavery, but a South and a nation that could never even imagine having had slavery, that could never imagine having had racism, that was really committed to the well-being and livelihood of all people, right? And that the Reconstruction state was, as we often forget, right, it was the greatest moment in the history of the U.S. of a multiracial democracy, right? It's where you get public schools from, right? It's for both Black folks and white folks in the South, right? There were 0 public schools before the Reconstruction state in the South, and that it was about creating a new world. So for folks, so many people have borrowed this phrase. So kind of most famously, former political prisoner Angela Davis, you know, talks about abolition democracy as a way to also imagine a world without prisons, right? So it's not just a world where folks are not locked up, but a world that is giving people all the kinds of things they need to survive and thrive. And so, and that's something that is constantly made and remade. It's not just like a one kind of fits all moment. And I really was thinking about this because in the years right after Katrina, so many of the social movement organizations, particularly but not only Black-led organizations in the city, right, talked about that moment as a Reconstruction movement, talking about it in the lineage of the Reconstruction after the Civil War, and then talking about what sometimes people call the Second Reconstruction or the Civil Rights Movement is another way of thinking about it. Like folks in New Orleans, that was the articulation, right? And so for me, it's always trying to think about what is the other kind of world that doesn't just kind of, how do I put this? That's really about being at the root of the various crises that people are having, that lead to criminalization, that lead to folks, you know, turning to extra-legal survival strategies, that lead to folks locked up, that lead to folks committing harm against each other, right? Like, how do we create a different world that's actually about kind of meeting people's needs in the here and now? And my hope is in the book, I would say there's a lot of different organizations that have struggled for more free Louisiana in the book. Civics Project is one, Safe Streets is one, there's many, many others. And that each of these groups are part of this kind of long lineage that goes all the way back to that Reconstruction moment of trying to make an abolition democracy or a different kind of world. And not just for Louisiana, but I actually think that folks can learn from wherever they are as well. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you for that. And again, if they have any educators in here in the school system that teach social studies, this should be a recommended read, you know, on their curriculum. It's lots of information. We're still going through it today. It's a lot of information. Just prison capital alone, OPP. You know, jails are for the city, right? But OPP, Orleans Parish Prison, you know, it's ran like a prison, not a jail. In other counties, you know, they say jails, but We have Orleans Parish Prison. You know, they still say it. It's OJC, but OPP. You know, we go to Alabama, what's the first thing we see in AGI? The orange suits, OPP. So anyway, it's a great book to be in on the high school level in the social studies department. Thank you so much.
I just have a statement. I don't have a question. Thank you very much for the book. I got on the phone a couple of times with the book club. I sprayed myself too thin, so I'm learning to reel it in. So a lot of times I couldn't get on. I really, really, really have the greatest and utmost respect for you, Mr. Norris Henderson. I am a former incarcerated individual. I went to jail in the 90s and doing crack at the time, so I got arrested for crack. And when I went to jail, I had a mother who supported me. I had, quote unquote, a sugar daddy who supported me. So when I got out, like while I was there, I suffered in no kind of way. I didn't have a lack of money, I didn't have a lack of commissary. When I got out, I never thought about anybody that was left behind. I had a husband who was incarcerated, state penitentiary, federal penitentiary, and my thinking was, I ain't no jailhouse wife, because I did not know. But something inside of me, God had something inside of me burning to do something, and I didn't know where, in what area. And in 2016, when my husband came out of prison, the man I swore I would never get back with, well, we've been back together 8 years, okay? We did a vow renewal in 2018, that was 20 years, and we just celebrated 26 years on the 27th of July. So when I was introduced to vote, and I came into the meetings and I started learning, I started hearing the stories of the mass incarceration, the excessive sentencing, the planned incarceration, and all the sufferings. I really felt very guilty, right? Because I didn't know, you know. But once you have knowledge, knowledge is power. I've been with Vote since 2016, and I'm passionate because of the passion that you guys have. The ones who are coming home, Norris, Biggie, Chico, not Biggie, Chico, I have to do it. That's how I make sure I get everybody right. I would like to say that I understand, Harry, when you express about your gratitude for Norris, and I do understand in the sense whereas I'm grateful for the work that he's doing and the knowledge that I'm getting, right? So it helps to ease the guilt that I was feeling, right? Because he's continuously getting, every time I come in here, I get different knowledge, right? And my guilt decreases because my understanding is getting greater, and I forgive myself for the lack of knowledge. Like ignorance, you know, I just didn't know. So I'm able to forgive myself now and throw myself into the work because I'm reading the vision. So I just want to say thank you again.
Hello. Firstly, thank you guys so much for coming and speaking with us. This was a very eye-opening panel discussion. I have 2 questions. The first one is specifically for Mr. Henderson. With the work starting from the inside of the prison system initially, how is VOTE still connected with everyone on the inside and maintaining the way that the organization started while it's now moving out and branching into the neighborhoods and people outside?
Well, the organization still exists inside. The Civics Project still exists inside. And we actually have, I think about 700 JP accounts where we kind of like communicate with those guys inside all day, every day. We actually have people that they're assigned tasks in the organization to communicate with them. And one of the things too, up until I guess this year, I have been in the prison. I came home in March of 2003, and the 23rd of March. And by April 2nd, I was back in the prison visiting. And I've been in the prison every month since I've been home. And so it's kind of like that commitment to kind of like demonstrate to guys that, you know, this is where it's at. This is what we need, but we need each other. Because my story to them is that, hey, just like Nine was saying a minute ago, it's like elections have consequences. And they see it now. Some of them see it more than others. And so it's been always going back. And the same thing, I'm always mindful of Andrew Joseph, who was a part of this creation of the Civics Project. Andrew would always say to people that came in that something good can come out of Angola. And we the proof in the pudding that something good can come out of Angola.
Thank you for answering that. That was very clear and lovely. The last question that I have, a little bit of background. I am a workforce specialist at a nonprofit, and so most of my work focuses on assisting people getting into gainful employment. I also work with reentry and things of that nature. Recently, I read a federal testimony called The Stagnation of the Black Middle Class, and it features a lot of W. Boyce's work in regards to how we have to gain more education attainment and then we'll get higher salaries, or how our education systems are working in certain ways and how people have these opportunities, but we don't go based on the zip codes and whatnot and who has access to AP classes and not have to pay for this for college credit. My question for that is, even though I am in this field, I am finding an issue with maintaining the information or receiving it. And so my question here is just, in what ways do you guys continuously educate yourself? What resources would you recommend or utilize so that I can educate and inform people a bit more? Because that piece is what's missing, so that people feel like they belong a bit more and actually want to do the work.
Well, for me, it's always been reading. I mean, it's a solitude reading thing. I was a librarian. One of my main responsibilities in the library was to read every book before I put it on the shelf. And so I just kind of like had, and we had like magazine clubs where we would share magazines, read newspapers. I've read over 1,000 books. And so it's just kind of like steady, and the thing is, now with folks having these phones and stuff, I mean, stuff is right in front of you. You can kind of like AI tell me, and you can kind of like read about something instantly. So I think it's just like your field of interest. You just have to kind of like, and then you grab people, you know? I mean, these lived experiences is more than anything you're gonna find in a book. And so I think depends on what you want to do. You ask people who, you know, and I tell this to people who do reentry work, because I would always be at these spaces and people would say, they'd be talking about reentry, and they'd say, Norris, tell me this. I'll be asking them, what do reentry look like? And they'd be hugging and butting. They'd be like, Norris, you know, yeah, I know, because I re-entered. I re-entered, but my re-entry, for everybody who re-entered, it was different. And that's what you got to do. You just got to kind of like connect the dots with people to help you navigate the terrain. Academically, you probably got a lock on it. But the kind of like other aspect of what it looks like, what the want, needs, and desires are, everybody has a different want, need, and desire. And so that's what you have to figure out. Just like Nan said, he in a program never existed before he went back. Come back out, all the programs exist. But I would venture to say that a lot of people running the program still don't have lived experience. Because my work in the reentry aspect of it happened because a friend of mine came to see me one day at Safe Streets, and I missed him. And the receptionist said, somebody came to see you, so you're going to come back tomorrow. When he came back the next day, I said, come on, I was so glad to see him. We going, because after Katrina, very few people were still here, we going to McDonald's. And we walking and talking. As you can see now, I can talk. So I'm doing more talking than I'm listening. And we got to McDonald's, I said, where you at? He said, I'm on the street. I'm like, I'm hearing, but I'm not listening. I'm listening, but I'm not hearing. And then when he said, man, I'm homeless. I've been homeless for 3 years. And that hit me in a way where I don't even know what that looked like. I don't know what that looked like. I came home, had a transition team, had a house, had an automobile, had a job that had been waiting on me for 10 years to come and fill. And so reentry for everybody in the room is something different. And so you just got to connect the dots with people to help them share their story. I mean, to kind of like just the reciprocity in it. Both of y'all have something to get out of it. You the knowledge that they're willing to share, and you probably can help them transition or transform to what they're trying to do, you know? So you just need to reach out. You got a lot of resources here. We're a resource. Our organization is a resource. So, you know, just put your face in the place, you know?
And then I kind of wanted to ask the same question to Mr. Harry and Eugene as well. So just how do you guys stay educated and up to date with these items outside of utilizing your books and whatnot?
Well, myself, I realize that we're living in dangerous times. We're talking about destroying the republic, the democracy that we have. So I've read history extensively. A lot of us don't know, we should know, that this government was built on the Republic of Rome. And Rome was a republic and a democracy for 500 years before it was destroyed. I have a lot of friends before we became a dictatorship, friends and relatives that tell me that this can't happen, that that can't happen. You know what I'm saying? But we see our rights eroded every day. We went to the legislature, and everything we spoke for, they were in mass against us. Everything, you know. And so I take and I go to YouTube. I go online, and I tell people, and I read, I watch Rolling Martin. I watch different views. I write views that's pro and con. And I learn. And when I learn, I spread this knowledge on. And I have extensive about a friend Z, who I can tell you, and go and they're right. And they tell me this, and then, you know, and I touch with their family. And I come here and I word and all this. I say, bro, I got a messenger. You know somebody. You know what I'm saying? You know, and every time I've done it, you say, okay, if I can't, you know, if I can't, we can't all the time, can we? But, you know, we do the best. And that's, you know, that's basically what I try to do.
For me, basically, it's a requirement for me to do my job, to, you know, gain knowledge. I was just thinking about it today, and I went to Ronald, and we was talking about a particular legislators, and because I was doing my research, you know, and this particular legislator want to bring people back in front of the committee to find out, is his actions legal to allow people to come back to court and be resentenced. So that's why, you know, coupled with the normal stuff, I exchange conversation, stories, you know, live experience like Norris mentioned earlier, you know, because you never know what that next person has knowledge about. It might be the piece of the puzzle that we need to make this thing work, you know. So that's how I do it.
Thank you.
My name is Craig. I know all these guys up there in Norris. I saw him the first day I went to penitentiary. I was coming on the road, and I stopped him and asked him, "You know Norris Henderson?" He said, "I'm Norris Henderson." Yeah, I was trying to get to the law library. I went in there. He told the first thing he said was, "You know how to read." And gave him a books, you don't have to shepherdize and research. And you have to do your own work. You know, you're not going to do it. Harry was in the dorm with Pine Tree. And he read a lot. Harry laid on his book, he read a lot. I wind up getting in the education building as a student. And I always come down there and ask me to do a skit for the Special Civics project. We had a conference up there with colleges, and it was going over different laws and teaching them, trying to give them, the students, look at how, you know, how the legal process works. But my thing is just no parole, you know, citizen without parole. And is there a way that you could possibly go to the legislature, possibly get some sentencing laws changed, lowered to offset the parole thing, you know, something to try to get that, because that's you know, that's like a death sentence, you know, and I'm saying that not exactly for the person, but for the prison system, the legal system, you know, all around, you know. So I'm wondering what can be done about it.
Grace. Well, one of the things that, and I said this earlier about elections have consequences. And one of the things can be done about that is that we have to target these people who have targeted us. And so we have to look at when the election is coming up. We're not term limited, you know, and so we have to weigh them out. But it was these same conditions that existing right now that created the Civics Project in the very beginning. So this might be the revitalization to wake folks up, because when we were there, when nothing was going right, it was like, you know, that rose come up through the concrete. That was us. And so it may be the same thing has to happen again. These folks are already scrambling for money. So they're about to rob Peter to pay Paul. Those people they're about to rob, we need to kind of like educate them is about, this is what's about to happen to you because y'all stood by and watched them do this. And so everybody now is fair game for these people. And so we just have to kind of like start planting our seeds. 2 years from now, there's going to be another election. And this time, we just have to be better prepared. Because the thing about people in office, they already have a track record. And like they say, if people show you who they are, believe them. We didn't saw who they are. And the thing is now, we just got to start preparing ourselves. That's all we got to do. And one of the things, that's what we always shout on. And I remember in the aftermath of Katrina, one of our congressmen said, he made this statement, because it was this big old fight about public housing, trying to get back in public housing. And he made this statement that Katrina and Rita had done something for them that they had been trying to do for 20 years, and that was close public housing. So they seized on that opportunity of everybody being evacuated. You know what? We can vote this up. This belongs to us. It belongs to the federal government. We can shut it down and nobody can come back home. And that's what they did. So you got rid of public housing as we knew then. We got to start thinking the same way. When we think about this, now one of the things that they said that we can use to our advantage, that they said, oh, the judges can adjust their sentencing. And so now when we go with these judges at sentencing, well, they already said you can adjust your sentence to this guy going to prison, don't have parole. You can just kind of like, so they're giving them 30 years, where you thought you would get out in 10, give them 10 years.
Right. That's basically what I'm saying.
But that on us to kind of like stay abreast, like you say, how do we read? And you know, when I hear people talk, I'm listening for that opening. And when I hear them say something, I'm like, gotcha. So that's what I'm going back at for these very same conversations about these things that open the door to give me the leeway to step in and say, no, this is what you said. You said you wanted to do this, and this was the kind of like the linchpin to this thing pass was that we're not restricting the judges to use their discretion to sentence people. So now when you go at the judge, if it's not a mandatory punishment, it's like you don't have to go all the way to the top of the chart. Right. You can stop down here at the bottom, right, if you choose to. Right. And if they don't, and then we start targeting them. We got to get rid of you, right, you know, because you're not going along with the program.
And another thing, an arena that you can go in to try to educate people, like schools or you know, different businesses where you have a group of people and, you know, target them with the vote, not necessarily giving them an insight on Democratic or Republican, just saying, you know, your vote is important, you know, and because 2045, you know, it helped me. That's how I got out. And I want to try to do something to help people give back, you know.
Well, it kind of like starts again. Like 3 weeks ago, it was kind of like, not for me, because I'm always optimistic for it, but it was kind of like gloom and doom for a lot of people, not knowing what's going to happen in this upcoming election in November. And then all of a sudden, at the drop of a dime, things shifted. And every day, somebody has reached out to us to come help them do voter reg some way, and with different populations of folks. So I'm excited by the fact that people understand now elections have consequences. And so they're seeing it, just like you were saying about they took money from Catholic Charity. They took money from a whole bunch of other nonprofits that the state was giving. Elections have consequences. That wouldn't have happened had we had another governor. It wouldn't, parole wouldn't have happened if we had another governor. Good time wouldn't happen if we had another governor. So that's the song. We have to give people examples, real life examples of the consequences that people face. It's like we created whereas technical violations, you go back for 15 days, 30 days, 45 days, full time, even 60 days. Now, a technical violation, if you got 20 years left, you're going back and do 20 years. And I don't think people fully understood what that meant. And when people be talking about we want public safety, they don't know what public safety look like. That's somebody else's public safety, putting people in cages. You know, and so again, elections have consequences, and we just have to gear ourselves up one step at a time. And I'm a true believer that when you take down the lion, the whole jungle quakes in fear, because everybody been trying to figure out what happened to him. So we just got to start focusing on taking somebody out of office that have done us a disservice. And you don't have to be 10 or 11 of them. You get one of them, because he's going to run tell that. He or she, they're going to run tell what happened to them. Well, I messed with them people took me out of office, and that's all it's going to take, you know? But we have to kind of like collectively be together to make that happen.
Check our track record out, but also Craig just recently got registered to vote, so that's one of the ways that you can do it.
That's the way you punch back. That's the way you punch back.
That's the way you punch back. And we've been punching back, and we haven't been sitting back. We've been fighting and fighting and fighting. And if you have not joined the fight, you should. In the teaching, I say our discussion, Norris had mentioned like everybody, you had to lick the stamp. That's even right down to me. If you got to cook, if you got to pass something out, the sign sheet, everybody have a role, and we have to play our role because we know that this government is not fair.
I think so.
The system is not fair, and we have to do what we have to do, and that's organize and that's get folks out to vote, and that's what vote has been doing. And we really just been doing it non-stop. We have to take a break sometime to read our own stories. But I want to say, and I think I speak on behalf of everyone, in reading this book and reading the stories of some of even the legends that we have here with so much experience, as we close out, I would like for you to, I would like for you to just share, like the closing out, just share something that maybe we have not heard, and we'll just give you this space right now.
Thank you. I mean, I think I'm going to say the nerdiest thing that I can possibly say,
Say it.
which is that the budgets budgets are like the most important documents to study. I'm talking about the state budgets, I'm talking about the city budgets. So much of the reading that I did in the archives was studying and reading budgets, and that sounds overwhelming. Sometimes it was, but I could see, like what Norris was just saying, like they're taking the money here, they're doing it there, you see, right? And one of the things that we didn't really touch on much today was the incredible resource of the Angolite, the Prisoner News magazine in Angola. That Wilbur Redo was the editor of for many, many years. And when you go back, I spread maybe 20, 30 years of the Angolite research. Folks inside were reading the budgets. They were translating what's going on, right? They were able because, you know, sometimes folks say, oh, we think we're going to do this, we think we're going to do that. But until it's actually put down that they're going to fund it, I'm even thinking about this thing that Safe Streets struggled around to get the creation of the independent police monitor. At first they were like, yeah, we'll do it at the city council, but they wouldn't fund it. And then people were like, oh, we need a budget line, because as long as there's no budget line, we can't hire staff, we can't do anything. And so being able to have some folks to really do that work, collectively share that information is so important, you know, because also in elections, we have things like millages, voting for new property taxes, sometimes for the sheriff, sometimes for the NLPD, other folks, right? So all of these little things seem wonky, and they are, but they're actually like a really profound site to kind of fight back against all these systems too. So that would be my very wonky thing. And also just, again, you know, I'm just so honored to be here. I think the work that I do is to hopefully synthesize the stories. Norris said this tonight, and he says it, I quote him saying it in the book, but he talks about the work of collectivizing stories as really central to organizing work. And it's my hope that this book might be a small kind of token of also collectivizing these stories that folks have been having about how Louisiana came to be an epicenter of mass incarceration, as well as what are the paths to get out of it and to create a different kind of world. So that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And the book capture the struggles, the book capture the victories. Go out and get the book. And we encourage you, maybe afterwards, if you have time, to get your book signed. If you have a book, this is not my book. I'm see if they'll give it to me. But I only need this book just to be up here. But I need my very own copy. Go out and get your copy. We would like to thank the panelists for showing up on today. Eugene Dean on in, Harry Johnson, Gary Harry, the fabled one, also known as the fabled one, Norris Henderson, who has been leading this fight, and thank you again, our author, Lydia. Everyone enjoy